that was a very important moment in CBS for all of us. Um, Cronkite had this idea. Cronkite had done a long 15 minutes on environmental questions, taking half of the program, and had been very well received. And so he said, let's take another issue and do a long, long takeout on it, because people like that, even if it takes half of the show. And they decided that Watergate would be the next one. So they came to me, because I was their Watergate correspondent, and they asked me to outline one, maybe two, long segments on Watergate, summing up everything that was known. So I wrote the outline, and it involved Dan Rather, involved several other people doing different parts of the story. And we went on the air one Friday night with this first part of it, 15 minutes. As we much later learned, we were hardly off the air before Chuck Colson in the White House called Bill Paley at home and said, if you're going to take after us, we can take after you. Something about you can be sure that the FCC is going to make it very difficult for you to renew your 5 licenses, your 5 television licenses and so on. And Paley panicked. Paley called up Dick Salant, the head of CBS News, and said, we can't do that second one. It's more than I can face. Salant said, but we have, at the end of the first one on Friday night, we promote that next one will be on Monday. There's no way we can not doing it, having announced to the country we're going to do it. And Paley said, well, all right, but see if you can cut it down or do something. And they did. Came back to me, and they said, we're making this cut, this cut, this cut, this cut, this cut, and this cut. And they cut it to pieces. And we went on the air with what had been about a third, maybe, and the least interesting or important third. It was one of my 2 worst moments at CBS. The second one, which in some ways was even worse, I will tell you about. We were getting ready as we approached July, August 1974. It was clear that Nixon simply wasn't going to make it. I mean, Senator Goldwater had come out against him. Republicans were against him. He was not going to be able to stay in office. And what was he going to do? Articles of impeachment were being written. They were getting ready to hold first House impeachment, Senate trial. All of that, they were all getting ready for when finally Nixon decided to give up and resign. Arthur Taylor, who was president of CBS Incorporated, and who had campaigned for Nixon during the election, came to Washington on that morning, and I met him and asked him what brought him here. He said, well, I'm very worried about what happens tonight. What do you mean? Well, you know that Nixon keeps blaming CBS for his troubles, and what I'm afraid of is that he's going in his resignation speech to denounce CBS as responsible for splitting the nation and polarize the whole country on the subject of television in general and CBS in particular. And I said, yeah, that could well happen. He really has it in for us. Later in the afternoon, I saw Taylor again and said, well, where are we? He said, we're okay. He's not going to say anything bad. You know that. It's going to be all right. At 6 o'clock, we were getting ready for the 9 o'clock appearance of Nixon. We were all hanging around, reading the wires. And the CBS bureau chief, Sanford Sokolow, S-A-N-F-O-R-D, Sokolow, comes around and begins telling all of the correspondents who are going to be on the air that night, fellas, take it easy tonight. Let's not be vindictive. I said, Sandy, what do you mean? What does vindictive mean? Well, you know, I mean, it's a tense moment, and so don't. I had been in charge of putting together a 20-minute thing called the political obituary of Nixon, which we kept up to date every day for the moment whenever he left office. That was killed. I stood outside. I thought I'd be on the air. I was the Watergate expert. They said, we'll have you on maybe later. Dan Rather was on there saying this was Nixon's finest moment. Eric Sevareid got on and said you have to sympathize with, and so on and so forth. And I could not believe in the way in which CBS was folding at the moment that it had won. A few weeks later was in Denver for a lecture and was interviewed by Denver Rocky Mountain News when we were talking about it. And I said that I thought that CBS had folded and that this folding was quid pro quo of some kind. Well, CBS didn't like that. And I was called in and told by Dick Saland that I was not allowed to speak in public anymore except from script which they approved. I said, you mean in my lectures around that? Anywhere. So you can't do that. Where are my First Amendment rights? So go read your contract. And Joe Califano, my lawyer friend, said to me, go read your contract. The contract has a clause in it. It's to prevent you from doing commercials, is what the aim of it is. But it says that you will commit yourself not to allow your face or voice to be used in other than CBS things without permission. That gives them the right to tell you. I said, but he said, you waived your First Amendment rights when you signed that contract. And so there was for a few weeks. And then Sland called and said, it's ridiculous. I can't go on with this. Do whatever you want to do. But the end of my career with CBS, which officially came in 1976, really came in 1974 when I was accused of fouling our own nest.